Good morning, good morning. I forget the rest of the words. Dun, 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 dun,
It's okay,
dun.
more
Good
coffee.
morning. Good morning to you.
Woohoo!
Good morning.
And this is without coffee, kids.
Ron wanted a jacket that was comfortable and helped to keep him covered in the wilderness. He wanted something that was flexible so that he could walk in it easily. Something that looked like a mountain man. The coat needed to be rugged enough to hunt in and protect in low temperatures and would protect him from the rigors of the wilderness environment. What he wanted was a rifleman's hunting frock in buckskin. This is the pattern that we've chosen to make our frock out of. It's called the Rifleman's Hunting Frock. If you're looking for a pattern like this, the best place to get these patterns is at muzzleloading shops, reenactment shops, or trading posts. Inside the pattern envelope, you're going to find a set of detailed instructions. It's about 4 pages long. It's got some very, very good tips in there for making this frock out of material or out of buckskin. And then you're going to find several pieces of paper that are the actual pattern. And this is, I think, probably 6 or 7 pieces of paper that you're going to cut out to make your frock. I want to take this time to talk about the materials that we've selected to make our frock out of. As you can see, I have a bunch of buckskins here, and these buckskins happen to be made of white-tailed deer. Each year, Ron and I harvest our white-tailed deer, and we do have the skins locally tanned. The color that we've chosen is called a burnt cork. That's a matter of preference for you. There's a multitude of colors you can choose. One thing that you do want to keep in mind, though, when you choose a color is that the darker colors, when they get wet or when you sweat in your clothing, tend to bleed onto your skin. So that's one thing you want to keep in mind when choosing a color. Another thing is, if you are making a frock or a garment out of buckskin, I want you to understand that unless you treat it with a special coating, it is not going to be 100% waterproof. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Now, there are different grades of buckskin, and I do want to show you a couple features to look out for when you do select your buckskin. Down here is a good example. This particular buckskin has bullet holes in it, and that is very common. There's usually an entry and an exit, and unless you want this feature, the holes, as a design feature in the garment that you're making, you're going to want to plug those up. Another thing is that there are different grades of leather. This particular leather, this was a very small white-tailed deer that we harvested, and it didn't yield very much leather, and the grain is not very good. It's also a little thinner, so it's a lot thinner than these other thicker skins that we have here. So just keep that in mind. I'll probably use this thinner piece as a decoration or any kind of fringe that I want to put on the outside of the jacket if I feel like doing that. This probably will not make it into the body of the garment. To save yourself some trouble and some money, because you definitely don't want to make a mistake on your expensive buckskin, first what we do is we make a frock from inexpensive material. We used an old beat-up blanket for this one, and we make this out of our paper pattern. Now, once we've made this and we have fit it on the person who is going to be wearing it, which happens to be Ron, we know this fits him perfectly, we are going to use this as our pattern for the buckskin. So we are actually going to be using this instead of the paper to be our pattern to make the buckskin frock for Ron. Before we take this apart and use this as our pattern, I wanted to point something out to you. Now, this is the inside seam, and I wanted to show you that this is the same thing we're going to be doing with our leather garment. Is we're going to be making a seam on the inside, and we're first going to be using a sewing machine to make the seam. And let me show you the outside here. Now, this is the outside of the jacket, and you can see after we're done making the seam and putting all of the pieces together, Ron is going to come through with some artificial sinew like he did on this, and he's going to do a cross stitch. And this is not only going to make the seam stronger, it's also going to add a nice old world effect. Well, we've cut our jacket up that we made out of our cheap material, and we now have the pieces of our puzzle, our leather puzzle that we're going to be putting together. And what's very important at this particular time is that you indicate on each one of these pieces which is the inside of the pattern. And here I've just taken a pen and written inside back on this one, inside right on that one, and inside right sleeve on that. And we have pre-selected which hides will go with which of these pieces. It only took 6 hides for this particular jacket, and we think we're going to have some left over for possibly fringe, and I think it's going to be a gorgeous piece. We're ready to start cutting our pieces. Before we do that, I want to make sure that you understand what I'm doing. The inside has to be facing, the inside of this is facing up, therefore your buckskin's inside has to be facing up. They just have to be in the same direction. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take a pen and we're going to outline it and we're going to cut it. When you lay out your pieces on your leather and you're ready to cut, try to position your pieces so you will save as much excess leather as possible. Now that I have this piece cut out, I have written in a hidden area which piece this is, so I won't get confused later on when I go to piece these all together. Well, here's all the pieces. Let's start putting it together. If you happen to live in an area like Ron and I do where the power goes out frequently, you might want to think about getting one of these while you still can. This is a foot-powered treadle sewing machine, and it's about 100 years old. We bought it at a junkyard for about $75, which is a real good deal. And as you can see, when it's not in use, it makes a nice table. When you want to use it, all you do is lift this up, and voila, you have your work surface and you have your machine. Let me show you a little bit more about it. When you find one of these, you want to make sure that all the parts work. So before you buy it, just fiddle around with it and make sure that the gears all work. I'm going to open this one up and look inside and make sure the gears are working. Looks pretty good. A couple of the things that I thought was particularly special about this particular machine is that it came with the original instructional manual, and it came with all of the attachments in this nice little box. What a find. One of the things you want to remember when you buy a machine like this is that if you need parts for it, there are still quite a few of these around, and you can buy a second machine for parts if you'd like. First, I want to show you quickly how this works. Your foot moves the treadle and in turn moves this flywheel that this belt is attached to, and that is what powers the machine. One of the things we noticed about this machine was that the original belt needed to be replaced. It was a little bit worn. So I went to a sewing machine shop and bought one for about $8. Let me show you how to install it. The first thing I'm going to do is thread this belt into the flywheel as far as it'll go down, and then I'm going to give it a little spin to help it, to jam it. The first thing I do is I thread it through the groove in the flywheel, and you can see I already did that. Now you take the ends of each of these, and there's holes on each side, if I can get my hand in there. There's holes on each side of the table here that they're going to come out of. You want to make sure both of them are up through these holes. These two ends are held together by this staple. Now what you have to do is pull them good and tight, and then I'm going to take my pen and mark where we're going to cut it and mark where the hole should be. And now I'm going to punch that hole. First I'm going to cut this where I indicated it, and then I'm going to take these vice grips that I've inserted a nail in, and I'm going to punch my hole. Ooh. There we go. Eek. That should do it. I don't have any thread in this machine, but I do want to point something out to you. When you start working with the treadle, you want to make sure that this hand wheel is pulled towards you. And you can see when you look on this piece of lead that I put here for demonstration that it is pulling it the correct direction. If you don't pull it towards you and it is going the other way, it's just going to stay in the same place and make a big ball. Well, it looks like it's time to start assembling the pieces of the jacket. Remember, when you start sewing, to sew with the leather inside out, and we're going to start here on the sleeve. One thing that I have to be careful of when I show edible plants in my videos is that I pick edible plants that are found throughout the whole world. This happens to be one that is found throughout the whole world. It's called the thistle. Let me tell you a little bit more about it. This is what a thistle looks like. Now there are many different kinds of thistles. They're all edible, and they all have the spiny leaves, as you can see right here. There's spines on them. Now I'm going to use my Becker tack tool to dig this out, and I'll show you how to obtain one of these for food. Notice I'm wearing gloves because these spines really hurt, and I am not kidding. They are serious pain inducers. And when you're digging one out, the root structure is just a little spike, and it goes down into the ground quite a ways, especially with a thistle this big. This is a pretty mature thistle. Now when this thistle matures even further, it's going to grow a stalk up the center, up here, and there's going to be a flower up on top. This one's not quite to that stage, but you can see it's starting to grow that flower up there. It's going to be, here we go. Now here's the root structure. This is very fibrous, as you can see. You can eat it, but you'd have to boil it, and it's still going to be fibrous, and there's not much flavor in it. The part that's going to be edible is right in here. And let me show you how to get to that nice juicy interior. The reason I dig the thistle out so far under to get the root out is because I'm going to use that as a handle, and I could actually obtain this without gloves. If you did it in this manner, you could do it without gloves. Now what I'm going to do, since I am using the root structure as a handle, I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to gently take off the spines, the spiny leaves. And when I get done, I'm going to be left with the stalk that is edible. And this stalk now, you can see that's part of the edible part right in there. Whoops, I'm cutting right through it. Well, that's a good shot actually. You can see the edible part right inside here. You can see the juices coming out of it. Now I could, once I get all of this this thistle, these leaves off of here, I will be able to just take this and eat it with my handle, just like that. But I'm going to be cooking this today. Now there is some nutrition in here, although you would have to procure many pounds of these to suffice you with the correct calories for at least one day of living. And this plant is in the sunflower family. The taste is something like a watery type of asparagus. There's not a lot of flavor here, but it does taste good. That is good. That is juicy, and it was cold last night, so it's kind of like a crisp asparagus celery. That's what it tastes like right now. Now, when this plant reaches maturity, you can eat it all the way up to the time that the flower buds. After the flower starts dying, you're not going to want to eat this. It's going to be like eating wood. So you want to get this stalk before the flower dies. Well, I could not resist it. I had to eat this. When you're eating this is a little tip. When you're eating one of these stalks, as you can see, I've pulled back the fibrous parts of the thistle like a flower, and I've eaten the inside. And as you saw before, there's a compartment in the middle when I opened it up, and there's fluid in there. And since you know that, if you get one and you lop off the top, you can actually pour it out, and it makes a sweet drink. It's full of liquid, and oh, it tastes so good. You may wonder where to find thistle. Thistle is found generally in the same area that you would find yarrow, which is in wet soil near marshes or near water, and sometimes it's located in the sand banks near water as well. It's a nice one. You can see what I'm talking about. You see this hole in the end? This is where all the liquid is, and if you wanted to get the juice from the inside, all you would do is suck on that, and you would have a sweet drink. I found this dried thistle stalk from last year. As you can see, it's quite tall, and it still has the flower bundles attached to it. Now, this thistle is just growing, and in the inside, I'm going to pull this back, you can see the little flowers that are just starting to emerge. Right there. Now that's going to grow quite tall, and it's going to, at the end of its life, it's going to dry like that, like the first one that I showed you. And as you can see, when it dries, it's definitely not going to be edible. One thing about these plants too is it's very highly unlikely that you're going to find a poisonous plant that looks like thistle. So it's unlikely that you will misconstrue any other plant for thistle. Nowadays, most people think of pemmican as one of these high-calorie food bars. That's not what real pemmican is. Real pemmican is a meat product, and this is meat with fat, and it does not need refrigeration, and it is packed with calories. Let me show you how to make it. And it starts with beef fat, and this is beef fat that I bought from the butcher. Sometimes you can get it for free, but I happened to buy this. It was nicely packaged in 1 pound packages. And you're going to want to, I preheated the Dutch oven here. You're going to want to put it on low as you can get it. We're going to start by rendering this fat. The kind of fat you're going to want to get is beef fat, and as you can see, it's the hard beef fat. You can also use lamb fat, but I don't recommend pork fat or chicken fat because it just doesn't set. Once you make the tallow, it does not set up hard enough to make the pemmican. This may look like a lot of fat, but it is going to render down, and we're going to render it and take out all of this cellular tissue, and what you're going to end up with is going to be the consistency similar to candle wax when it's cooled off. So we're just going to let this, keep stirring it, let it bake out or fry out. The process of making tallow from this fat is going to take you a little while, so be prepared to stay at the stove for a little while. Another thing to keep in mind is to keep the heat on as low of a temperature as possible because you don't want any smoke coming from this. You want it to go very slow, want it to cook very slow. Another thing that you want to be careful of is the splatters because this is hot fat you're dealing with. Now you can see what I mean. This fat has only been in here on low for a couple of minutes, and you can already see the liquid that's coming out of it. You want to just continue with it and stir it around. By now you might be wondering what pemmican is. Nowadays when someone talks about pemmican, you might think of a fruit-like bar that you buy at an outdoor store. That's not really That's not really what the original pemmican is. The original pemmican is a meat product, and it's made with rendered fat and any kind of dried meat. We're going to use dried beef in this one, but the old timers, the old cowboys, used to render their fat and mix the meat together. And after you render the fat and you get rid of all this the cellular tissue that can go rancid, the tallow won't go rancid. It can actually be kept for years without refrigeration. So it's a really good, nutritious food. It doesn't need refrigeration, and you can easily take it in your backpack out into the wilderness and make soup out of it or give yourself nutrition. So it's a really good, important skill to know. When the fat gets to this stage, a lot of people add dried spices to their fat for flavoring. I'm going to leave this pure. I'm not going to add anything to it. If I want to add spices to it, I'll add it later to the beef when I show you how to prepare the beef. I like to do it that way. I like my tallow to be as pure as possible. We're about 15 minutes into the rendering process, and you can see how much liquid has come out of them and how small these are called cracklings, how small these cracklings have gotten. We're going to render it just a little bit more, and then we'll take out the cracklings. When the cracklings turn golden brown like this, it's time to take them out. There is still some fat in some of them, but I'm not going to worry about it. As you can see, we've got quite a bit of liquid. I'm going to take them out and put them over here to the side here and drain them. Now those cracklings have a lot of flavor in them, and if you want to, and I've done this before, you can salt them and drain them and salt them and eat them just like pork rinds if you want to. I don't recommend doing that if you have high cholesterol though, or if you're trying to lose weight, because these are pure fat. Another thing you can do is save the cracklings. They will go rancid, but you need to save them. Well, they'll stay for probably about a week, especially if you refrigerate them. And you can keep them because they're very flavorful to add to soups and even to some muffins. I have a friend who adds them to muffins. You may wonder why we are straining out all of these cracklings. Well, the reason is because those cracklings are made of cellular tissue that will make this tallow go rancid, and that's exactly what we don't want to have happen. Now we're going to strain this fat just to make sure you have all of the cracklings out. After we're done with that, we're going to put it back on the heat and we're going to boil out all of the excess water. I'm going to go ahead and return this back to the pan. It's been strained now. There still is some bits in there, but we're not going to be concerned with those right now. We got the major bits out. And we're going to be doing our final boil now. And there is still a little bit of water in the pan. We want to make sure that that water is completely out of there. And then we will strain this. We've boiled out all the water from this tallow. And now we're going to do our final straining. And as you can see, I'm using a coffee filter. You can use cheesecloth or any other material that you think will filter it finely. And then this process of making tallow is just about finished. We started this whole process with about 3.5 pounds of fat, and we rendered about 2.5 pounds of tallow. So if you know in your recipe that you need a certain amount of tallow, you can use that as kind of a guide to help you to figure out how much fat you're going to have to buy to make your recipe properly. What we're going to do now, it's still warm. It's actually pretty darn warm. We're going to let this cool in this container, and as it cools, it's going to be turning white and a little opaque. Well, it looks like this tallow has hardened enough for us to go on to the next stage of making pemmican. I'm going to go ahead and get this burner started. There we go. Okay. I'm going to let that stay on high for a minute while it heats that pan up. Usually when you make pemmican, you use a dried meat. You can use any kind of meat, elk, deer, beef. I'm going to be showing you how to make pemmican using very lean ground beef. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to fry it up and cook it very thoroughly to get a lot of the fat out of it. This is extra lean ground beef. And the reason we're frying it before we go on to the drying stage is we want to get as much fat out of it as possible, and you can see all the fat that's already starting to come out of it. We're also trying to drive out as much moisture from the beef as possible, and what you see coming off of here is steam, it's not smoke. Before I take the meat out to drain it, I'm going to add the spices. And we're going to mix them in and let them cook on a low temperature. All I'm adding to this particular pemmican is salt, garlic powder, and pepper. You can add any flavor that you'd like, any type of spice that you'd like. The reason we're only adding these 3 spices is because when we get up to the mountains and we make our soup with the pemmican, the final pemmican, we're going to want to use these spices as a base, and we'll be able to add other spices up there if we want to change the flavor while we're up there. The next stage is to drain it on some paper towels. Now I'm going to blot the top with some paper towels just to force out more of the fat. Oops. We did a pretty good job. There's not much coming off of there. This is the pan we're going to dehydrate the meat on, and as you can see, it's just a cookie sheet that I've covered in foil, and I've taken a couple old towels to place on the bottom, and these glasses on all 4 corners are going to keep the cover that you're going to see shortly away from the meat. So we're just going to start adding our meat. There's nothing scientific about this process. We're going to be letting this dry in the sun, and every day we'll be coming in to move the meat around to make sure that it gets thoroughly dried evenly. The cover for this is going to be an old pillowcase. We're just going to cover it up. And as you can see, those glasses hold the cover off of the meat. Now we're going to place this in a dry place and let it dry. We're going to leave this here for 2 or 3 days. The meat will be nice and dry by then, and this pillowcase lets the air go through and keeps the bugs off of the meat. If you don't want to wait the 2 or 3 days that it's going to take to dry this meat in the sun, you can use your conventional oven. Just put your meat on a cookie sheet, put it on low, which is usually 150, and leave it in there overnight and you should be ready. We started out with 2 pounds of ground beef, and after it was dried we only ended up with 8 ounces. So you're going to lose about 75% of the weight when you dry the meat. Before we go any further with this, I did want to let you know that this is just dried beef, and you don't have to make it into pemmican. You can take it up in the mountains with you just like it is, and just to reconstitute it in soups, all you have to do is add it to your water and you got your meat. It's very important that you know that the ratio for pemmican is usually 60% meat to 40% fat. Now I know I have 8 ounces of meat here, so I'm going to add 6 ounces of fat. Since my fat is still hard, I'm going to go ahead and heat this up in the microwave so it's easier to mix. Now that the fat has melted, I'm going to stir it in thoroughly, and you can see the consistency is going to be about the consistency of fudge. At this point, your pemmican is done. This is basic pemmican. You can put this in a Ziploc, let it cool, and take it up in the mountains with you. But if you'd like to do it the way that we do it, now is your time to add your special ingredients, and let me show you what our special ingredients are going to be today. I'm going to add extra garlic powder, extra onion flakes. I do like that onion. Extra salt. And we're going to add a tablespoon of flour and about a cup of dried potato flakes. And we're going to mix that thoroughly. About 1 ounce of this mixture is going to give you about 180 calories, and all you have to do is add 1 ounce of this to 2 cups of water, and you let it boil for a little bit and you let it sit, and the flour and the potato flakes will make a nice thick gravy, and when the beef gets reconstituted it's going to give you a great beef stew. It is really good. To get it up in the mountains, we just add this mixture to a Ziploc. Now it doesn't need refrigeration if you've properly rendered your fat and dried your meat thoroughly, and at room temperature this should last about a year, and if you freeze it, it will last pretty much forever. Now the original pemmican recipe that I showed you without the flour and the potato flakes, you can add anything that you want to that. You can add dried fruit, raisins, nuts, barley, wheat, anything you want, and any kind of spices that you'd like, any dried spices. This happens to be a recipe that Ron and I really enjoy. We like garlic, we like onions, and we like salt. So this is the one that we spend our time making.
Now that you've seen how to prepare pemmican, I'm going to show you how to use it. Now I brought this pemmican up here to the mountains, and I like doing this. I put my recipe on the outside of my Ziploc bag, and I'll know exactly how to make it. I'm going to take 1 ounce of this pemmican and add it to my approximately 1 ounce. I mean, you don't have to be exact about this. Woo! Fire. And then I'm going to add 2 cups of water to it. Because you're going to cook it, it doesn't matter if your water's purified or not, but you don't want nasty chunks in your water. Just make sure it looks clean. Add 2 cups to it. Approximately 2 cups. Again, you don't have to be exact. And because I have this nice thistle, I'm going to cut that up and add that to it as well. to the fire and let it get nice and thick. While the pemmican is cooking, I want to show you how I keep my my spices. This is my spice pack. I buy these little Ziplocs, or these little reclosable bags at jewelry shops, and I keep my spices in them. I have onion, pepper, garlic, and salt, and I keep them all inside a larger container. As you can see, the pemmican is, as it cooks, it is making its own gravy from the fat and from the potato flakes that add the starch to it. We're going to let this reconstitute a little bit more. It will get a lot thicker when it is finished cooking. This is one of the tricks that I use for cooking. When your fire starts going out, or if you want to move your fire, you can do this to move it as well. You can move your fire around your cooking pot, and that's what I essentially did. I start placing little twigs around it. Eventually the fire will move around your cooking pot, so you'll get a faster cook that way. And there you have pemmican, vegetables and all.
Now that I've made my pemmican, I have a little bit of tallow left here, and I want to show you a few things that you can do with it. You can make candles at this stage. You can use this tallow to make soap. You can use it for margarine, or you can let it harden and cook with it like you would cook with butter or oil. The first thing I want to show you is how to make a simple candle. And as you can see down here, I have a dish. Doesn't matter what kind of dish, you just need a dish. Second thing you need is a wick, and this wick happens to have a little weight on the bottom so it will stand straight up. All I'm going to do is take my warm tallow and add this to my bowl. Add one more here. Okay. We're just going to let that cool off, and you have a candle. Now, tallow does not smell like a conventional paraffin or beeswax type of candle you're going to buy at the store. Tallow does have an odor to it, and it also burns quickly. This candle is going to burn a lot quicker than paraffin or beeswax, and it smokes a lot. So it's an inexpensive way to make a candle if you don't want to go and buy candles at the store, and it's readily available since it's just used from animal fat. Well, here's our tallow candle, and as you can see, it's not smoking very much because we got most of the impurities out. If you render your fat and it has a lot of impurities in it, it will smoke a lot, but this one's looking pretty good. If you got nothing but time on your hands, let me show you how to dip a tallow candle. Just take a standard candle wick, dip it one time in the tallow, one time in the water, and set it aside to cool. Take your second one, do the same thing. Water, set it down, and you're going to continue this until you get it to the thickness that you want. Told you it was hard. Because tallow burns at such a low temperature, it's not a very hardy candle. If you'd like to, you can add up to 50% paraffin or beeswax to it, and your candle will last longer that way, and it will also burn cleaner with less smoke.
Here's another use for that tallow. This is an egg carton fire starter, and it's made with an egg carton. I've filled it with dryer lint, and then I've drizzled it with tallow. This egg carton fire starter will burn for about 5 to 10 minutes depending upon how much tallow and how much dryer lint that you put in it. Let me show you how to make one. Here's my 3 ingredients. I have dryer lint here, and I want to make sure that the dryer lint that I use was made with cotton. So what I used to make this cotton lint was I dried t-shirts and jeans. The second thing I have is an egg carton, and you can use a full egg carton, but I'm just using 4 here for demonstration purposes, and my tallow. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add my lint into my cartons, or my egg carton. That's about enough for each one of them. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat up the tallow in the fire. Now that it's liquid enough, I'm going to take my tallow and I'm going to drizzle it on top of the lint. Now be sure to leave some of the lint without tallow on it, because that's what's going to catch your spark. If you put tallow in the whole thing, it's not going to catch it as well. I'm putting about a tablespoon in each one of them. And now that this is done, when the spark hits the lint, it's going to catch on fire. Then the sides of the carton's going to catch on fire, and then the tallow is going to keep it burning. Now what's really neat about this is there's 4 fire starters here, and you can take this up in the mountains with you in a Ziploc to keep it dry, and every time you need one, you just pull one off. And there you have your fire starter. This is another cool camp tip. Ron made this for me. It is a necklace, and it is also a holder for my utensils. My fork and my spoon fit nicely in here, hangs around my neck. When I'm done using it, I clean it, put it back, and, whoops, get in there. Get in there. I can't get it in. Anyway, you keep it around your neck and you won't lose it. Okay, it really does work. Let me show you how it really works. You put the spoon down here and the fork on top of it. Then you place it inside the little pocket, and then the Velcro holds it shut, and you won't lose it. You can walk around the camp. The only thing you have to be careful with this is that if you're leaning over the fire, you don't want it to catch on fire. So anyway, that's a little camp trick. This is bannock. This is another wilderness food that I like to take up into the mountains. And if you have seen Woodsmaster Volume 10, you will see how to make this bannock product. It is a floury bread product. Now, I'm going to set that aside for now, and I want to show you this. This is a fish, a ring for a fish net that we found along the trail. It's aluminum. It's very malleable. I have made it into a rectangle, and this, along with a little bit of foil, is going to be our frying pan. This is my heavy-duty foil, and when I bring it up in the mountains, I keep it in a nice Ziploc, and I have it folded in sections, in usable sections, so I don't have to do any kind of adjustments to it when I get out here. I'm going to take my foil, and I'm going to add it to this ring, and pull it pretty tight. And this is how I'm going to keep it on there. I don't need a real big work surface, so this is going to be enough foil for what I'm gonna do with the bannock. Just going to set down there real good. And there's my work surface. I'm going to go ahead and make the dough now. I have my bannock, and I'm going to add enough water to it to make it so it's malleable, but so it's dry enough that it doesn't stick to your fingers or to the bag. So I'm going to add it just a little bit at a time, and I'm going to mix it together right in the bag. This bannock looks like it's the right consistency now. I halved it because I'm going to save this for another recipe I'm going to be showing you. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this bannock and I'm going to flatten it out in my hands. And an important feature in this recipe is that you have extremely filthy hands. It actually does make the pizza taste better. I've already taken some tallow and I have rubbed some on the bottom of this to make a sort of a non-stick surface. And I'm going to go ahead and put my hand under here and flatten this out. This is our pizza dough. Make it a little flatter. My pizza's not going to be round, it's going to be rectangular. The thinner you make it, the quicker it's going to cook, so keep that in mind. That looks pretty good right there. Now another thing that I carry with me up to the mountains is a hard cheese. This is smoked Gouda, and it doesn't go bad. If you keep it in a Ziploc, you can just, it's a quick snack, it's got a lot of calories in it, and I really like cheese up here. So I'm going to take this cheese, and I'm going to cut off some of it and add it right to the pizza. Don't need a lot because it will melt on there. One more piece. There we go, that's good. Now at this point you can add any kind of spices that you want to it. You know by now that I like garlic and salt, so I am going to add garlic and salt. But another thing I'm going to add is pemmican. This is going to add some fat to it, and it's going to add some meat. The meat is not going to dehydrate. It is still going to be like jerky when I cook it, but it still has a wonderful flavor. And this is going to be packed with calories, and that's what you need when you're up here working hard. Here's some garlic. I'm going to put some salt on it. Salt's another important thing you need up here if you're sweating and working hard. And now all we need to do is put this on the fire and let it melt down and cook. Normally when I make a pizza like this, I like to use the stone oven, one similar to the one that you saw in Cave Cooking Volume 1. But I'm going to cook this one like fry bread over an open fire. Now the basic recipe for fry bread is just the dough itself. And you can add anything you want to the top of it. You can cook it up by itself and add peanut butter or jelly to it, or thistle, or whatever you want to add to it. This just happens to be one of my favorite recipes up here, and I wanted to share it with you. So I'm going to go ahead and start cooking this. One of the things Ron and I like to do on trips is to bring up some freeze-dried tomato paste that you just need to add water to make our pizza. You can also bring sun-dried tomatoes packed in olive oil if you'd like. Those stay for a long time up here in the mountains. I'm going to make kind of a little bit of an oven. I'm going to cover this up here. Make sure this isn't just been on the fire for a little while. It's a little warm. I'm going to cover this up, and this is going to act as kind of a primitive oven. You don't need to cover it great, but that should be good enough right there. And I'm going to put that back on the fire. That'll keep some of the heat in. This wind that we've got today is kind of taking a lot of the heat away from the top of the pizza. That's why this is a good idea. It's about time to take this out. It's been on the fire for about 5 minutes. And let me show you the finished product. Let me show you underneath here. This is something you have to be careful of, that it doesn't burn. This is done perfectly underneath. And oh boy, does that look good. I can't wait to start. I'm going to start eating that right now. I can't even stand it. If it's not getting cooked on the top, just add some coals to it just like you would to a Dutch oven. I'm going to go ahead and check this now. Oh yeah, that's done. Oh boy, does that look good. I want to show you the bottom of it here. Notice it didn't stick because I put that tallow on there. It's cooked all the way through. And now it is time to eat it. I'm going to eat it. Oops. Oh, that's crunchy and good. Oh. That's my favorite. That is heaven. You have to try this recipe. Very, very good.
Can I have some, Mama?
That's yours, baby.
Come on.
Here's that other half a bannock that I showed you how to make earlier, and I'm going to make something called stick bread. It's an expedient way to make bannock bread, and it tastes really good. First thing you do is roll it out into kind of a hot dog shape, and then you're going to take your stick and smash it right in the middle and bring it around. Try to get that on there. It's good if it's a little bit sticky. This one is a little bit sticky. Gonna make sure it's on there really good. Notice the dirt from my hand. That's actually seasoning, and it tastes good too. I'm not kidding. Okay. Well, I'm gonna twist it a little bit just to make sure it is on there. Oh, twist it that way. I twisted it. There you go. Twist it like that. And then this one's gonna go this way. There we go. All right, that's on there pretty good. Now all I'm going to do is put this on the fire, and when it's done I'll eat this bannock right from the stick. I know the outside is cooked on this bannock. The inside still needs to cook a little bit. I'm just going to place it directly into the ash. That ash has a lot of warmth, and it's going to cook it in the center. You can do the same thing with ash cakes. You can just make a little pancake and set it right in the ash if you don't want to cook it on a stick like I'm doing. That's very good as well. This should be done now. I'm going to take this out of the ash, and whoo, that smoke got in my eyes. I'm going to brush off this ash. This isn't going to hurt you, by the way. This ash is fine to eat. You can leaven breads with it, and it's an incredible thing. And it is going to taste good. Now, I'm going to let this cool. While I let this cool, I do want to point out that bannock is such a versatile food. You don't always have to add garlic and salt to it. You can add sugars to it, jam, jellies, anything you want. And I just showed you a couple of examples of how to cook bannock, and you can go from there. Just use your imagination. Now look at how this comes off of here. Whew. Boy, that's cooked all the way through. Okay, it's very good. The recipe already has salt in it, so it does have some flavor. And like I said, if you want the recipe, it's in volume 10 of Woodsmaster.
You got there, Karen?
This is squirrel a la Romande. Ray likes his meat with the fur still on. Ray, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Oh, God. Be careful there, that heart's still pumping.
That's what I call real squirrel.
A lot of people ask me if I know any good blades for ladies, and I have a few here that I use personally, and not only are they nice looking, because a lot of ladies do like the nicer looking blades, they function very well. I'm going to go through them one by one. This first one here I want to show you is called the Cheetah, and it's made by Tops. And the Cheetah is a very nice knife. It's got a nice drop in it, and it's very comfortable for the hand, for a lady's hand especially, because ladies' hands tend to be smaller than men's. Now this is a great knife if you want to skin things, if you want to cook with it, or if you want to carve something. I really like this blade. This next one here is the Skinat, and that's also by Tops. It's a little bit different, it's a little longer, and it's also the width of the handle, I'm going to show you next to the Cheetah, it's a little thicker. As well, the blade is a little thicker on it. And this is a nice camp knife. I mean, I've skinned with it and I've cooked with it. It's just really, these knives will do the same function. It's just a matter of how it fits in your hand and which one you like the best. This blade here is a custom blade called the Picouni, and it's made by Rob Simonich. It is a beautiful camp blade, and as you can see, it's very thin and it fits in the hand well. Ladies' hands fit very well on this. It's also got a nice lanyard attached to it, and because it is a custom blade, Rob Simonich can make this blade out of any type of metal that you would like, any type of steel. And what's great about this one is you can get any color handle that you'd like. I happen to like blue, so I picked a blue one for this one. This is a beautiful and awesome custom camp knife. If your lady wants a knife with some chopping power, but a knife that's not too big, this is the knife that I recommend. It's by Tops, and it's called the Smoke Jumper. It's made out of 1/4-inch steel, and the handle is thin enough to still fit into a lady's hand, and it's not very long. It's got a lot of chopping power, and this is the blade that I carry now as my chopper. Let me show you how this baby chops. You're gonna love it. There are a lot of makers out there. The two that I featured today are just two makers that we have a lot of experience with, and we know their quality is impeccable. So if you're interested in any of the Tops blades or any of the Simonage blades, please look for the number at the end of this video and call them directly for a catalog.
Hi, one of the things we learned to really appreciate out here is great coffee. This is dark roasted French coffee and a coffee press from REI. This is my luxury item. I always bring in something that is absolute luxury, and this is it. It's a coffee press. From there we fill it up with water. Let it sit 3 minutes, and we've got French roast coffee. And I gotta tell you, it's a hint right about now. I mean, it's a real hit. Okay, and now we get the finished product. The coffee press here has a little screen on a plunger, and as you push that down, it pushes all the grounds down to the bottom. And in this case, you wind up with really good, dark roasted French roast coffee in the middle of nowhere. This may not seem a big deal at home when it's nice and warm, but trust me, out here, it's worth its weight in gold. There you go.
Ah! It's hot, but good.
Warning, do not pick morels based on this segment. Professional field training is required. Bad mushrooms can make you violently ill or kill you. Books and videos are not enough training.
These are all morels that we've collected in just about a half an hour's worth of work. We found them in a burned area, and they're very easy to find. They like soil that's moist, that has the burnt char on it, and they grow usually at the base of pine trees. The first thing I'm going to do with these morels is I'm going to take off the root system and the stem, and I'm going to cut them up and place them in some water and clean them. Once you have your mushrooms properly cleaned and cut up to the size that you want, you're going to take your tallow, and this is tallow that I brought up here to the mountains. It doesn't need refrigeration. And I'm going to add some to the pan that I'm going to be cooking in. I'm going to add a little bit more. I'm going to add this to the fire and let the tallow start to melt, because that's going to be the oil that we're going to be frying our mushrooms in today. Now that it's hot enough, I'm going to add the mushrooms. I'm going to start frying them around there. Now I'm going to add a little garlic and a little salt to it. And let them do a little more. It smells good. Oh my God. Oh my God. This tastes so good. You guys are going to just... Right now, after it's been frying for a while, you can make a soup out of it at this time. You can add your water to it. We're not going to be making a soup out of this. We're just going to be eating the fried mushrooms. It's almost done. so you can see these better, I'm going to put them out on this foil. I've cooked them for approximately 4 to 5 minutes on the fire. And oh boy, they smell so good. I know they're going to be fabulous. Oh my God. If you're like me, you clean your hands in your food and then wash the food off your hands. That's what I'm going to do right now. My hands are filthy. And I'm going to show you a little camp trick that I use. Now, I don't use soap directly in the stream. I get a coffee can or whatever kind of container and I fill it with water. If you want to heat it in the fire, which is something that I did here, then you'll have warm water. Now this is my little camp trick. It's a nylon sock that I have put a natural soap in, a soap that floats when it gets in the water. Now all I do is I keep it around my hand here and I wash with it. Now after I'm done washing, look at all that stuff coming off. Well, the beauty about this, after I'm done washing, I just take it like this and I wring it around to get all the water off of it. And then I hang it on my pine tree next to where I sleep. In the morning it's dry. The prepared product that is most similar to Bannock would be Bisquick. But this is it tastes a lot better. You can add more fat to it if you want to. And it is more nutritious and has more calories. So let me show you how to make Bannock. Here's the ingredients for your basic recipe for Bannock. You have 1 cup of flour, a teaspoon of baking powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 3 tablespoons of margarine. You can add a little bit more margarine if you want a little bit more calories or more fat in your recipe. And optional is 2 tablespoons of skim milk powder. This just gives it a better consistency and it adds a little bit of flavor and a few more calories. Now what we're going to do is we're going to sift all of these together. Now I am using white flour. You can substitute, for this white flour, you can substitute whole wheat flour or any other kind of flour that you want, anything that you prefer. So we're going to sift all these together. I need to do a tablespoon of the baking powder in there too. We're going to sift all the dry ingredients together into a mixing bowl. You can mix this by hand, but I'm going to use my mixer. I'm going to use that anyway. That milk is just it's too big to get through that sifter, and I know it's not going to get clumped up because I've done it before. So, all right, what we're going to do is we're going to add our butter, 3 tablespoons of butter in this instance. I usually add a little bit more, but this time I'm just going to use the 3 tablespoons. I'm using margarine in this recipe. I prefer to use margarine because it doesn't go rancid as quickly as butter and it's more pliable in colder temperatures. But like a lot of people, I call margarine butter and butter margarine, so if I do that, you'll know I'm talking about margarine in this particular recipe. And I can't get this on here. Now that I have the mixture all in here, we're going to start it off on low speed. And we're going to keep it there. And we're going to keep it there until the margarine gets mixed in. And the consistency, it takes quite a while. The consistency is going to be like granules of sand. So we're just going to let this continue to go until it's ready. Around the edges, so you got to stop it and clean off the edges and start again. Okay, this looks like it's just about done. It's the consistency of sand. I'll show that to you right now. See, it's a little sandy. And because that fat is mixed in there so well, you can see that you can actually form it together a little bit. This is going to make a good dough when you get up there. Now what we're going to do is add this to a Ziploc. And on my Ziplocs, I like to carry these in Ziplocs because it's easy to, you can fold them and just stuff it in your pack any way you want. I like to put Bannock on the outside of it. Another thing that I like to do is if I have some specific recipes that I want
while I'm up there, I'll put the recipe and just write it right on the Ziploc. So we're just going to add this bannock to the Ziploc. This makes about a pound. This recipe makes about a pound of bannock. And for this trip, this was enough for Ron and I to share on the trip. So you can take this for yourself if you like bannock a lot, or this is good enough for 2 people. Now you're going to see a lot of uses for this bannock coming up in this video. It's a really versatile food, and it tastes great.
Thanks for joining me in Cave Cooking Volume 3, where we showed you a whole bunch of cooking tips and techniques. We hope you'll join us in Cave Cooking Volume 4, where we'll show you a bunch more. Until then, see you on the trail. Come on, Neech.
Come on, baby, bye.